Right now, inside the cells reading this sentence, there is code that did not come from a human being like you. It came from someone else. Someone with a heavier brow, a wider chest, hands stronger than yours will ever be. Someone who hunted through a frozen Europe you would not survive a week in, and who has been gone from this planet for 40,000 years. And yet a piece of them is still here, still working, still switched on inside your body quietly every second of your life. It shaped how you fight off sickness. It may be shaping how you feel today. You are partly them. Most people carry this and never know it. They walk through their whole lives never once told that a part of them is older than their own species. By the end of this, you're going to know exactly what it is, where it came from, and what it is still doing to you right now. But to understand the stranger inside your DNA, you have to go back to a moment almost nobody pictures correctly. The moment two different kinds of humans stood face to face. Forget the cartoon, the slow grunting caveman dragging a club. That image is wrong, and it has been wrong for a long time. The real Neanderthals were not a failed sketch of us. They were a different kind of human. And by almost every measure that mattered where they lived, they were better at it than you would be. They ruled Europe and Western Asia for around 300,000 years. 300,000. Your entire species, everyone you have ever heard of, fits into a fraction of that. They had brains as large as yours, or larger. They built campfires and cooked their food. They shaped stone into edged tools and fixed those edges onto wooden spears. They wore worked hides against the cold. And they were not only survivors, there are signs they made ornaments, used pigment, collected the talons of eagles like jewelry. There are signs they cared for their injured and their old, keeping alive people who could no longer keep themselves alive. And their bodies were something else entirely. Compact, dense, engineered by the ice into a machine built to hold heat and take punishment. Their bones show injuries so frequent and so severe that scientists have compared them to rodeo riders. A life lived up close and physical against animals that could end them. This was not a lesser human waiting to be replaced. This was the apex human of an entire continent. And for hundreds of thousands of years, they had that continent almost entirely to themselves. Then, far to the south, something changed. A second kind of human, your kind, began walking out of Africa, and they were heading straight toward the Neanderthals world. Picture it. Somewhere around 50 to 60,000 years ago, small bands of modern humans pushed north and east out of Africa. Thin, tall, strange-looking newcomers carrying different tools and different ideas. And waiting for them, already home, already masters of that land, the Neanderthals. Two kinds of human, one planet, meeting for the first time. We don't get to watch what happened, but we know they overlapped. In the same valleys, hunting the same herds, sheltering under the same ridgelines, for thousands of years. We find their toolkits layered in the same ground, sometimes so close together that it's hard to tell where one kind of human ended and the other began. These were not two worlds separated by an ocean. They were neighbors, rivals, strangers learning the same land at the same time, and in that long overlap, there was competition. There was almost certainly conflict. But there was something else too, something that, for most of the last century, no serious scientist would have dared to claim out loud. They had children together, not once by accident in some forgotten corner, enough times, across enough of the map over a long enough stretch that the evidence never fully washed out. Those mixed children grew up, had children of their own, and a thread of Neanderthal, woven into a human family line, began moving forward through time. That thread did not stop. It kept going, generation after generation, for 2,000 generations, until it reached the one person the Neanderthals could never have imagined. You. But for the longest time, this was just a story. A guess. Bones can hint at a meeting. Bones cannot prove a bloodline. To actually prove it, someone would have to do something that sounded impossible. They would have to read the DNA of the dead. Here's the problem with DNA. It falls apart. The moment a body stops living, its genetic code begins breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. Water gets in. Bacteria get in. The DNA of every person who ever handled the bone gets in. Wait 40,000 years, and what's left is a shattered, contaminated mess. A billion-piece puzzle, soaked in noise, with most of the pieces missing and no picture on the box. For decades, that was the wall. Everyone knew the answer was locked inside those old bones. Nobody could open them. Then a team of scientists spent years learning how. They built rooms cleaner than operating theaters just to keep their own DNA off the samples. Every breath, every touch, every speck of dust was a threat that could ruin the result. They wrote entirely new methods to pull ancient code apart from modern contamination, letter by letter. They took fragments of Neanderthal bone, ground almost to powder, and began painstakingly to rebuild a genome that had been broken apart since the last ice age. And around 2010, they did it. For the first time, we held a readable copy of a Neanderthal's DNA. The work was so difficult and so important that the scientist who led it would later be handed the highest prize in all of science for it. Then came the real test. They lined that ancient code up side by side against the DNA of living people today. If the two kinds of human had never mixed, the match would be zero. Clean. Separate. Two branches that never touched. The match was not zero. The number that came back was small and enormous at the same time. If your family line traces outside of Africa, you are carrying, on average, somewhere around 2% Neanderthal DNA. 2% doesn't sound like much, but it isn't the same 2% in everyone. Different people carry different fragments. Add all those fragments together across everyone alive, and a large share of the entire Neanderthal genome is still out there, still circulating. Broken into billions of living people, but not gone. They didn't fully vanish. They got distributed. And this is the part that should stop you. Because that inherited code is not just sitting there as a dead souvenir. It works. The Neanderthal DNA inside modern people has been linked to real, functioning parts of the body. Pieces of your immune system, the alarm network that decides how hard to fight an infection, carry their inheritance. So do traits in skin and hair and how your body handles sunlight and cold. Some fragments have been tied to how your blood clots, how you feel pain, even to sleep and mood. There are threads connecting it to how the body responds to certain diseases, sometimes protecting people, sometimes putting them at greater risk. And here is the strange part. Over tens of thousands of years, your genome has been quietly editing them. The useful pieces, the ones that helped your ancestors survive a cold, unfamiliar, disease-filled north, were kept. Many of the harmful ones were slowly purged out. What's left inside you isn't random junk. It's a filtered inheritance. The parts of another kind of human that were worth keeping. Think about what that means. When your immune system fires off against an illness, part of the machinery, answering the alarm may be running on instructions written by a species that has been gone for 40,000 years. The same is true for smaller things you never think about. The way a stretch of skin reacts to the sun, the color that comes into your hair, whether you're an early riser or someone who comes alive at night. Ordinary parts of being you, quietly shaped by someone who lived and vanished long before history began. And they weren't the only other humans in the story, because while one team was reading Neanderthal bone, the same cave system in Siberia gave up a single fragment of a finger. And the DNA inside it belonged to no known human at all. A third kind, we call them the Denisovans. And we know them almost entirely from their code, not their skeletons. We have barely any of their bones. We have their genome. Some living people carry their DNA too. In parts of the world, a Denisovan gift helps human bodies breathe thin mountain air at altitudes that would leave you gasping and dizzy. So it was never one meeting. It was a whole tangled family, your kind and at least two others, trading pieces of themselves into a bloodline that eventually became you. Which leaves one question that will not go away. If this DNA is so useful, if it's woven into your immune system, your skin, your survival, then why did the people it came from disappear so completely? Around 40,000 years ago, the Neanderthals ran out of time. After 300,000 years as the apex human of a continent, they thinned out, retreated into smaller and smaller pockets, and then, across a relatively short window, they were gone. The last of them held on at the far edges of the map at the southern tip of Europe, and then the map had only one kind of human left on it. Why is one of the great unsettled questions, and honest scientists still argue about it. Maybe it was the climate. The ice age swung violently, and their world kept shifting under them. Maybe it was numbers. They may have lived in small, scattered groups, and small groups are fragile. A few bad generations can end them. Maybe your ancestors simply outcompeted them, edge by edge, over the same food and the same shelter. Maybe new sickness moved in both directions when the two kinds of human met, and their bodies had no answer for ours. Maybe it was all of it at once, closing in from every side. But there is one more possibility, and it changes the whole shape of the story. Maybe they didn't only disappear, maybe in part they were absorbed. Every mixed child born into a human family line was one more Neanderthal thread pulled across the boundary, out of a shrinking population and into a growing one. Bit by bit, some of them didn't end, they just changed address. They moved into us. So here is where we leave it, back where we started, inside your own body. The other humans are not entirely gone. A fraction of them is still running, silently, in the cells that are keeping you alive as you take your next breath. When you fight off an illness, when your skin meets the cold, when you can't sleep at 3 in the morning, some of what answers is an inheritance older than every civilization, older than farming, older than language as you know it. You were told that we were the only humans left, that every other kind hit a dead end and vanished without a trace. That was never quite true. One of the places they survived is you. Your body is not just a body. It's a record. A history book written in code carrying the fingerprints of people you were taught to think of as extinct, people who met your ancestors and never fully let go. And this was only the first page.